Hi guys. So today we're talking about a notorious criminal who terrorized the former Bendel states in the 80s, particularly in 1986. So this person goes by the name Lawrence Nomanyagbon Anini. I'm sure many people remember that name. The Gen Z may not relate, but you need to follow the story so you can keep up with the history. So in 1986, there was a reign of terror by Lawrence Anini in the former Bendel states. To begin with, let me just tell you some things about Lawrence Anini. So Lawrence Anini was born into a small family. He was the second born and the only son. Although years later, after his father died in 1980, it was discovered that his father had another son with another woman. But that's by the way. Lawrence Anini grew up in a village about 20 miles from Benin, and he moved into Benin City at quite an early age. When he moved into Benin, he attended the Oza Primary School, after which he got into secondary school, but he barely spent even 3 years in secondary school before dropping out. So he dropped out of secondary school to learn driving. He wanted to become a driver, right? So he began learning how to drive. He successfully completed that and he became a skilled driver. He began to drive a taxi, and soon he became very popular at the motor parks in Benin City, and soon became powerful and began to control the motor park touts and even operators, as he was said to have control over varied interests in different motor parks. So he became like a mini lord. In fact, he was also called the Law. One of his aliases was of Bigbo. So Lawrence Anini soon became that powerful. And as time went on, Lawrence Anini felt his skill in driving needed to upgrade. But the only thing was that he was upgrading into crime. So he became a driver, a transporter for criminal gangs, thieves, godfathers, everything criminal. He became a transporter for them. Now, for those groups, for those gangs that Anini was driving, he was working for them. But for Anini himself, it was a period of tutelage. So he was actually learning the art of crime. And soon enough, Anini felt he could start up his own gang. So he quit being a driver to all those other criminal gangs, and he formed his own gang. And his own criminal gang included Monde Osubo, who was said to be his second in command, included Friday Ifege, included one who is called Zege Zege, included one Idahosa, and there were so many of them. Now, Anini's gang became powerful at terrorizing Benin. They became powerful for everything negative. They began as car hijackers. They will hijack cars, they will rob buses and all of those, but they soon progressed into bank robberies. So early in 1986, 2 members of Anini's gang were arrested in a robbery and they were prosecuted. Now, that didn't go well with Anini and his other gang members, because that was there was an under the table agreement between Anini and the police that the police was going to destroy the evidence that was connecting his gang members to that said robbery. But the police, whom he had such agreement with, did not carry out or keep up with their own side of the agreement. So his gang members were prosecuted. Now, that prosecution and Anini's perceived betrayal of the police spurred his reign of terror in Benin City as he began to operate on another level. His gang members operated with reckless abandon. In August 1986, some members of Anini's gang robbed a bank where they killed a police officer. And in that same month, Anini was driving a Passat car, which was believed to have been a stolen car anyway. And he got to a place where there was a barricade by the police who were trying to stop his car. And they opened fire on those police officers, killing 2 police officers. Later on in that same month of August 1986, Anini's gang struck at a first bank in Sabongida Ora in Benin. They were said to have made away with $2,000. At the time, the dollar was exchanging for 5 naira. And even though the money was said to be, chicken feed, they actually left a blood trail. So many people were killed in the course of that robbery, even though the money was nothing. So on September 6th, 1986, Albert Otto, who was the driver to the then Assistant Inspector General of Police, Christopher Omeben, Albert Otto was driving his boss's car, a Peugeot 504, when Anini's gang stopped him. They stole the car from him, they killed him, and dumped his body along the Benin-Abo Expressway. His body was not found until about 3 months after. And a day after that very incident, Anini's gang also, stopped another Peugeot 504 around the Fedeco office in Benin. They stole the Peugeot 504 again from the driver who was driving the car. It was really a reign of terror by Lawrence Anini's gang in Benin. It was dreadful. Anini was said to be almost invincible, as it was somewhat impossible to get him arrested. And yet, the crime was on the rise. And every robbery was pointing in his direction. Anini was almost invincible, said the people then. And it was almost impossible to arrest him. And he personally wrote letters to media houses at the time, describing his activities in the Robin Hood-like words. And he never hid his activities. He wanted the media to know the activities he was carrying and the ones he clearly was involved in. He was that bold. Now the question is, what was emboldening this young man? He was 26 years old. He was a young man. What was the balls? What was giving him so much balls? So in the same month of September 1986, there was the killing of a former employer of the Nigerian Observer's newspaper, Frank Onarumi, and also Mrs. Remi Sobanjo, a chartered accountant, was killed. All these people were killed by Lawrence Anini's gang. And there was also the snatching of a Mercedes car of the then Ugeli monarch. They had no limitation, no restrictions as to their operations. They could strike whenever, wherever, on whomever. It was that bad. Their terror was felt on all quarters of Benin. They soon spread their operations to the north and eastern part of Benin. of Bendel, former Bendel state, and it was scary. His matter was discussed at the National Security Council meeting. The then military head of state, General Ibrahim Babangida, had ordered that Anini and his gang be hunted down. Towards the end of September 1986, Anini's gang stormed a gas station at Wire Road in Benin, and they made away with substantial amount of their day's sale. Like I said, they had no limitation, they had no restriction. They could strike whenever, wherever, whomever. The nation witnessed the height of Anini's terror on the 1st of October 1986 when his gang ambushed the then Commissioner of Police of Bendel State, Kashmir Ibokwe. They rained bullets on his vehicle, and even though he sustained injuries, he didn't die from the attack. He survived it, but he had terrible injuries, sustained terrible injuries. And that same day, earlier that same day, before they attacked the Commissioner of Police, they had killed 2 police officers. Within the span of 3 months, they had killed over 9 police officers. So it was like a war against police officers because of Anini's perceived betrayal of the police officers over his 2 gang members who were prosecuted for the under the table agreement where the police was supposed to destroy the evidence. So it looked like he declared war against the police, and he was not going to stop anytime soon at the time. So on the 21st of October 1986, Anini's gang killed a medical doctor, A.O. Mojave, along the Textile Mill Road, after which they proceeded to the African Continental Bank to rob, and they made away with 46,000 naira. A day after the operation at the African Continental Bank, Anini stormed the village market road, where he suddenly became a Father Christmas. He threw words of cash on air for men and women to pick. It was for the fastest fingers. And I'm wondering, was that supposed to make him feel better for his crimes, like he was doing something good for the people? What was the rationale? The one question that many people kept asking then was, what exactly was giving Anini the balls to operate with reckless abandon? Like, he rained terror on the old Bendel state, and he was not arrested at any of his operations or even after. People were scared, people were terrified. This man had rained his terror on civilians, on the police, and he was fast spreading to other parts of the Bendel states, currently Edo and Delta states, right? So they needed something to be done. And the fear was not just gripping the Bendel state, former Bendel state, it was gripping the whole nation. It became a national concern. But what exactly was emboldening Anini? What exactly was giving him so much guts to operate the way he did? And do you know what they say? There's always a backing. Nobody just operates like that without some sort of backup, right? So it turned out Anini had an insider in the police force. Oh yeah, it makes sense now, right? It sure makes sense now. So while people were describing Anini as invincible because it was impossible to arrest him, they were still questioning how he could operate like that. Yeah, there were rumors, there were speculations that he was using some charms for disappearance, because he was said to have such powers that he could disappear from a place and appear wherever he wanted to appear. So apart from those charms, there must have been some other backups, physical backups, that were giving him some balls to operate the way he did. And it soon became evident that Lawrence Anini had an insider in the police, and this insider was Inspector George Iyamu. So Inspector George was said to be a police officer who lived a life of affluence. He had so much cars, he had so much properties, but what many people didn't know was that he didn't get all of those from his salary or from his legal entitlement in the police force. He was a corrupt police officer who was working with criminal gangs, and he was supplying ammunition to Anini's gang. He was giving them every information they needed to know on police operations. So whenever the police planned to arrest them, he would have given them a tip-off, and boom, they will move from the scene or wherever the police is targeting to arrest them from. So it went on that way, and Anini kept getting away with all of his crimes because of an insider who was a mole. Anini's reign of terror ended on December 3rd, 1986, when a superintendent, Kayode Onaroro, summoned courage, led a crack 10-man team to number 26 Oyemosa, opposite Ugodala Primary School in Benin, where Anini was. So he got there, knocked on the door, and someone opened the door. When the person opened the door, it was a young man who opened the door. So Superintendent Kayode asked him, "Where is Anini?" So Anini is saying that his hideout had been busted. He tried to play smart with the police officer, and he said to him, "Well, Anini is under the bed in the inner room," and he shoved the police officer and had butted him in an attempt to escape. But of course, it was too late. So the police officer stepped on his right toe, brought out his gun, and shot his left ankle. So when he slouched, trying, almost falling to the floor, the police officer held him and sat him down. And he asked him again, "Are you Anini?" And this time around, the hardened criminal, the daredevil, wasn't hard anymore. And he said to the officer, "I won't lie to you. I no go lie to you. Now me be Anini." So he immediately got arrested. Meanwhile, he was in company of 6 women. He was wearing just an underpants when he got arrested. And it is said that it was his girlfriend who gave him up. So she walked in sync with the police. She tipped them about where he was, and she was said to have removed some of his charms, hid them before the police arrived. What does that remind you? Does it remind you of a Bible story? Something like Samson's story? Okay. So you know what they say about women? Very powerful. They can bring you down and they can still make you. The judge that sentenced him to death, Justice James Omoagege, reminded or told him during his sentencing that the history books will remember him. But of course, they won't remember him for good. It is happening. Today we're telling his story, but not for good, sadly. So he got sentenced to death by hanging, and he was executed on the 29th of March, 1987. That was the end of a notorious criminal. Whatever has a beginning has got an end. Guys, be a good citizen. Take care of your mental health. Take care of your emotions. Be kind to yourself. Be kind to the people around you. And always be a good citizen. I remain Dr. Sike Olokun, and I love you. If you enjoy watching our video, please like it, share it, talk about it, and do well to subscribe to our YouTube channel.